taking names at the door. And then Honest Israel for hosting and co-sponsoring again. Marcy Spiro, who fit us in to the very busy schedule pre-Purim. Clinton, who's running the Zoom now. And everyone else who's helping. And so I want to just get rid of one little piece of Purim business, and then we'll start with the fabulous panel. All right, I'm losing it again. Sorry. Okay, because obviously I don't know how to use a microphone. So we are going to have 4 debaters, and then lots of eating and schmoozing. I want to start with get rid of one little piece of business. Why am I wearing a ridiculous hat? I am wearing a ridiculous hat for 3 reasons. First of all, because it's Purim, so that's what you do. Secondly, because our sainted founder, Max Ticktin, Rabbi Max Ticktin, if anyone has been coming that long, would always deliver these remarks with a succession of hats, which he would put on 10 or 12 while delivering his introduction. And thirdly, even though I know I'm among friends, I have a whole inch of white roots showing, and I thought, nah, better put on a silly hat. So now I just want to hand this over to the fabulous Howard Mortman of C-SPAN, and I really should say really nowadays of this debate. He has made this debate happen for some years now. And then we have a wonderful panel of debaters, including our board member, Beryl Neurman, our frequent partner in crime, Mike Rugel of the museum, my esteemed colleague, Dan Freedman from Moment Magazine, and I will also thank Moment Magazine, my actual employer, for providing some of the groggers and some of the food, and Todd Kliman, who is, I think Howard will make all the jokes about Todd. Apparently they go way back. But with that, I would say again, make a lot of noise, eat a lot of food, and if you're on Zoom, sing along and have fun.
Thank you all for coming out. By the way, one more time for Amy Schwartz, everybody. Let's give it up one more time for Amy Schwartz. Amy's just terrific. She's got a great personality. It's true. Amy can light up any room she walks in with just a flick of a switch. So she's great. Also from the Jewish Study Center, as Amy mentioned, you worked so hard on tonight's big event. The equally great Jerry Garfinkel. Let's hear for Jerry. Jerry's in the back waving. Jerry, thanks for all your hard work. As always, Jerry, by the way, Jerry's been at this for a long time. Mr. Longevity. Mr. Longevity. Even Jimmy Carter asked Jerry, "Hey, what's your secret?" So, what a great crowd! Thank you to everyone who's here in person and everyone who's out there on Zoom tonight. And of course, our panelists. We'll get to them. We have a wonderful lineup. They're the stars. We'll get to them in a moment. Tonight, we hope to get you thinking and to get you laughing. After all, this is the greatest collection of funny Jews since George Santos played the Knesset. Thank you, Todd. By the way, sadly, no, we couldn't book George Santos for tonight. He couldn't fully commit to taking a side, although to be fair, he did say he was Latke-ish. Also, we asked several, by the way, it's kind of interesting, we asked several Ivy League college presidents to join us, But when we told them they had to take a side, Latke or Hamantascg, they all said it depends on the context. It didn't work out. It's as Amy said, it's been 4 years since we were last in this room, and now we're back in person. It's so great to see everyone. The only downside for tonight, Amy pointed out the food back there, the only downside, those Hamantascg in the back, they've been sitting there since 2020. So just, wanted to, they're aging. I want to talk old and stale. Wait till you hear my jokes, Todd Kliman. Of course, since we're here live in person tonight, now I can hear when you yell out, "You're not funny." For 4 years, I could have sworn you were yelling, "You're on mute." If you've never been to one of these before, the rules are real simple. In fact, there are only 3 rules. We actually developed those 3 rules from our experience doing this remote on Zoom. Here are the three rules we found work real well doing on Zoom. One, we listen respectfully to all opinions, even if we disagree. Two, we don't interrupt. And three, we don't validate parking. So, and also for those of you here in person, thank you for paying the $10. It was $10 to get in. Thank you for paying the $10 to get in. Really appreciate Washington legalized gambling. Like on the way over here tonight, I drove. Mike, it's interesting. On the way over here tonight, I drove by the sports book, Dan, at the arena. Beryl, this is kind of interesting. They're giving even odds for Latke and Hamantascg. I do like the gambling slogan, by the way, for betting Hamantascg. You'll be rolling in dough. Also, they said, by the way, it's kind of interesting. They set up a special Gamblers Anonymous hotline in case you developed an addiction to Latke or Hamantascg. Although Todd, they aren't the nicest people, Mike. It's less a hotline and more like a guilt line, Dan. You tell them the problem, and they say, "Would it hurt to have a salad?" Thank you, Beryl. I fear next year this debate will be done by artificial intelligence. It's so realistic. You tell AI, show me a room full of people talking about latkes and Hamantascg, and it gives you a video where everyone is 40 pounds heavier. All right. But in this room tonight, we're celebrating unhealthy foods. This is a safe space. We consider apples and honey to be trigger words. By the way, one quick thing. There's lots going on in the world today. We understand this. In England, for example, the royal family is in trouble. I saw it coming when that picture came out of the smiling kids. I looked closely. They all had braces. The Brits are known for bad teeth. By the way, I think all their problems are because of King Charles. He comes from Wales. Most people come from monkeys. All right. Thank you. By the way, thank you, Matt Katz over there. And of course, here at home, you know the politics going on. Jeff Katz, you know the politics going on. I know what many of you are saying. Does America really want another competition between latkes and Hamantascg? You've heard the complaints. They're old. We already went through this 4 years ago. They keep confusing latkes and Hamantascg. Sometimes they call them blintzes. Some say it's time to pass the torch to a new Jewish-based food like plant-based babka or plant-based brisket. It's fitting. Thank you, Amy. It's fitting we have this debate now. It's the only thing left this election year that the Supreme Court isn't ruling on. Our nation is so divided. Half the country wants latkes. Cameron, isn't that right? Half the country wants latkes. Half the country wants Hamantascg. And there's always this chance this whole thing will be decided by that one independent guy who likes lasagna. Reading over my shoulder here. Oh, and we're meeting, by the way, this is kind of good. We're meeting a week after the Academy Awards. The big winner, Oppenheimer. By the way, if you saw the movie, you know his nickname was Oppie, just like our favorite Hamantascg filling, Oppie Seed. All right. Ladies in the back. All right, let's get going. I know things are tough in the Jewish community these days. It's everywhere in the news. We're being torn apart, anguish and anger. The existential debate refuses to end. Support latkes or support Hamantascg. But for this night only, let's push aside that which divides us. Let's unite as one community. This is our night as proud Jews, and this is our night for bad jokes and fake emotional conclusions. For this debate, let's all share the same pronouns, yummy and yummier. We are going to get started with Beryl at the end. By the way, a round of applause for Howard Mortman. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Please try the luck. And Beryl, by the way, for our debaters tonight, we've been asked by Jerry to speak up when the microphone comes down to you or when you start. We're going to start pushing the undecided case tonight. Beryl Neurman is a Jewish Study Center board member and a lawyer for the Department of Labor, specializing in retirement and healthcare benefits in private sector employment benefits law. Everybody, please give a warm Latke Hamantascg debate welcome to Beryl Neurman.
Thank you, Howard. I have to see if everyone can hear me. Okay, that may be a bad thing, but next thing I need to know is my first slide working? Okay, yeah, this is my talk, Indecision 2024, or should that be Indigestion 2024? Okay, and as you might think from the title of my talk, this may be a Latke Hamantascg debate based upon politics. However, that is wrong. Although I've lived in Washington, D.C. area for 25 years, I don't know much about politics. In fact, I don't know much about anything to have a scholarly debate about the Latke and Hamantascg. I explained this to Jerry when he asked me to do this debate. His response was, well, you're a creative person. I bet you can think of something. So I've tried to think of something based on whatever knowledge base I have. In keeping with the title, I was indecisive. I'm a fledgling screenwriter who writes as a hobby for now until I retire. So the first thing I tried to write was a screenplay in favor of the Latke or the Hamantascg. I started the screenplay out the traditional way with the words fade in, and then went on to write scene directions such as interior, Addis Israel, social hall night. Beryl, a middle-aged woman, sweats profusely while sitting behind a table and stares warily out into the crowd. Then I wrote some monologues such as, I can't believe I actually agreed to speak at the Latke Hamantascg debate. Like most writers I know, I'd rather hide behind a keyboard and have an actor speak the lines. Anyway, I tried to brainstorm my way through a screenplay. I thought I could have, next slide, the Latke and Hamantascg, next slide. Okay. The Latke and Hamantascg being a prize fight like Apollo, Creed, and Rocky. But then I thought, what am I doing? My audience is not going to want to hear a screenplay being read by someone like me. It should be a movie. Sorry. It should be a movie. Let me roll up here a bit. Okay. Sorry. I apologize for the technical difficulties. Anyway, told you I'm not a public speaker. Anyway, but it should be a movie. But movies take money. And since I'm not James Cameron, who wrote the Terminator, Titanic, and Avatar films, raising money would mean to make the film, I would need to write a screenplay based on a property with an established fan base, such as a superhero. Next slide. However, I couldn't figure out which food, the Latke or the Hamantascg, would look best in a bat suit, Spider-Man costume, or green all over. By the way, happy belated St. Patrick's Day, y'all. Then I thought I could create my own superhero movie, but I would need an origin story with a famous actor. However, Mr. Potato Head from Toy Story was still under a non-compete clause, and the D-list gingerbread man from Shrek would have cost me too much dough to make a movie starring him. In addition, I don't remember the Barbie movie featuring actual foodstuffs. So I have no screenplay to illustrate the story of the winner of the Latke Hamantascg debate. Anyway, I would have been violating one of the cardinal rules of screenwriting taught to me by Yale Film Studies professor Mark Lapadula. And this is the one scholarly reference I'll have in this whole talk. Anyway, the advice was, don't date more than one screenplay at any one time, which means finish one screenplay before thinking about starting another. Right now, I'm writing a screenplay called Driven by Her Band, which is about my love of the band Duran Duran. Anyway, so I have no screenplay nor actors for this talk. It's just me. Disappointing, I know, and quite possibly a disaster. As I mentioned in my bio, I am a lawyer, so I offer this disclaimer. I'm not one of those lawyers you see in courtrooms on TV, and any nexus between my job and the Latke and Hamantascg is inconceivable. A famous line from Princess Bride. I do, next slide, ERISA Form 5500 analysis. What is ERISA, you may ask? ERISA stands for Employee Retirement Income Act of 1974, also known as Every Ridiculous Idea Since Adam, which ties it to its talk. In fact, the only way I could relate ERISA to this talk is this. I review forms all day, every workday, and even though both the Latke and Hamantascg have forms, the circle and triangle respectively, I shudder at the thought of geometry. So I had to go back further in my memory to think up a springboard for this talk. So I remembered the only way I survived law school was with mnemonics such as, next slide, fitted cab and echo. Fitted cab stands for the 7 intentional torts, and echo stands for the elements of adverse possession. There are also other mnemonics that I could have come up with, such as encramp for the termination of easements, but I don't think I should go into what might be a digestive issue here at this event. So my mnemonic for this debate is, next slide, debate. When I first looked at the D in debate, I think of things I really like, such as Duolingo. Next slide. Next slide. And next slide, Duran Duran. There's also a disclaimer, I might be a disaster as a debater. I am notoriously bad at decision making. In fact, it's now one of my disabilities. Next slide. And that is why I've referenced a Duran Duran song just now, Notorious, in this debate to calm myself down. In fact, I've never, ever willingly engaged in any public speaking except on the topic of disability rights, and it has been prior to the pandemic since I've been asked to speak publicly. You'll soon know why, if you don't already. And another part of my disclaimer is that I don't know anything about preparing either of these foods, the latke or the hamantascg. I don't prepare my food at all. In fact, when people ask me which restaurant I want to go to on any given day, which happens frequently, I reply that I am an IIJ girl in terms of cuisine. Next slide. I love Italian cuisine, Indian cuisine, but as you can see from my slide, J does not stand for Jewish, but rather Japanese. I'm just glad this talk does not debate the merits of, show slide, gefilte fish and chopped liver, because then I would be really stuck for anything interesting or positive to say about either one of those two foods. I've asked my brother Jeff, next slide, who is a very good home chef and a very gifted comedic speaker, if he could help me discuss why I don't make hamantascg myself. I think I know why I don't make latkes. Show slide. They are fried in oil, and this type of cooking is especially dangerous for me. However, my brother Jeff could only think of one danger that could be associated with making hamantascg, and that was, show slide, the danger of eating way too many. I think I know where my brother would stand in terms of the winner of this debate. So he wasn't too helpful in helping me understand the cooking process for the hamantascg, but his remark about eating too much led me to the E part of my talk, next slide, which is for exercise. I've attended a lot of hamantascg and latke debates, but I've never heard anyone discuss the merits of latke and hamantascg in terms of a useful guide to exercise. Actually, my mind is more geared to exercise than to work. I often tell people that I'd rather be I'm an athlete or a dancer trapped in a disabled woman's body. Despite the fact you see me in a wheelchair, I really do care about being fit. Show a slide. Now, all of you might say I spelled it wrong, but in my world, fitness includes a P and a T, as in physical therapy. Moreover, I was recently in Italy, and it seems like the Italians spell PH words that you would see in America, such as, show a slide, photo and pharmacy, with an F at the beginning, and the Duolingo owl confirms this. My current fitness guru, Steve Schafferman, who's also a member of the tribe, originally agreed to help me with this part of the talk, indicating which food the form of exercising is actually dancing. And I don't know if you can see my shirt, but it says, I latke, move it, move it. And actually on my iPad, if I can get it to play, I have the actual song. And it's not a Duran Duran song, so I'm sorry to disappoint you. And you show a slide, you can show the artist. I was told that there was show slide, that there was no audio. Is it coming up? Okay. Yeah, that's the artist. It's reel to reel. Move it, move it. I like to move it, move it. Yeah, I like this song better. I'm blue, and that goes with the B in my debate. Next slide. And as I look at my blue shirt, I originally thought the shirt means I'm late, move it, move it. Or perhaps the Latke felt it was self-important and everyone should get out of its way. I don't know whether I like that or not. Anyway, if you think that my talk up to this point has been balderdash, please remember that my brother, Joe Slide, has the comedic talent gene and the better oratory skills. Next slide. So now I'm left with the letters A, T, E. Besides Duolingo, the other word game I like to play is the jumble. So if you unscramble letters A, T, and E in a way that is most relevant to this Latke Hamantascg debate, you come up with the word, next slide, E. And I still haven't decided which food I would really support, but I can't help but notice that the Hamantascg is in the shape of an A and it fits the word eat. So I guess I would support the Hamantascg. If anyone wants to complain about the way I came out in this debate, then like an independent voter, support the next slide. It's round and cooked in oil, but sweet with a filling. And at least it's served at one of the holidays inferred from this debate. And that's the end of my talk. So according to screenwriting form, I'm going to fade out. Thank you very much.
That was great, Beryl. One more time for Beryl Neurman, everybody. One more time. By the way, as you were doing your presentation, and Jerry and Amy might remember this, I think every year, it's amazing, we end up talking about ERISA law at the Latke Hamantascg debate, if I'm not mistaken. All right. Now, for the pro-Hamantascg side, Dan Freedman has been a senior editor at Moment magazine since 2020. At the end of 2019, he retired from the Hearst newspaper's Washington Bureau, where he held a number of reporting and editing positions, including rotation on the White House press pool. Dan grew up on Manhattan's Upper West Side in a household that, who's clapping for the West Side there? In a household that placed high value on Jewish jokes, humor, and Yiddishisms. He received his BA from Rutgers University, a Big Ten university, and an MS from the Columbia University Graduate School of Journalism. Please, everybody, Dan Freedman.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, if there's a sound issue, let me know. I've never been accused of having a soft voice. So first off, thanks, Beryl, for teaching me and mentioning ERISA. You know, I kind of wondered about that for 50 years, though I kind of always thought ERISA, wasn't she a backup singer for Duran Duran or something? Some of their hits, maybe not. And Howard, well, you know, you didn't realize you were doing it, but you kind of blew my lead, you blew my cover, because I was kind of going to lead into this thing about how, well, you know, I was going to build up to the last paragraph, and then I was going to do the big reveal. Which one did I prefer? But now you've kind of blown it, but that's okay, because I get to just skip the first paragraph. Okay, so we're going to cut right to the chase. Oh, okay. Well, no, I'm not going to reinvent and undercut. I'm not that good, really. Now, to the merits, as the lawyers say, right? In the top 40 of Jewish baked delicacies, Hamantascg, to me at least, is an unmemorable B-side. I speak only of its taste and texture, not its symbolism. To me, it's a Lorna Doone type butter cookie with some jam filling. Hardly a challenge to the chart-topping #1 of my childhood on the West Side, which is chocolate babka. I mean, it's really not even close. On the other hand, when made right, the potato latke is, well, it really is amazing, to be honest. And as food writer Jeffrey Yoskowitz, whom I interviewed at one point, put it in his really wonderful book that I can highly recommend, Gefilte Manifesto. written with Liz Alpern. He says, let's all agree that a great Hamantascg, he uses singular here, Hamantascg, can be satisfying at best, but a great latke is transcendent. And yet, Hamantascg is pretty much a one-trick pony when you think about it. It's trotted out on Purim. Its triangular shape is supposed to represent the hat of evildoer Haman, even though Hamantascg literally translates as Haman's pockets. And, I'm not going down that rabbit hole right now, but that's worthy of some exploration, I guess. And what about the potato latke? In the Jewish culinary pantheon, is achieved a level of universality exceeded only by the bagel. And when you think about it, much like the bagel, it's poised to break out into the mainstream. You can imagine a fast food employee at the drive-up window asking you, "You want latkes with that?" I have a lot of traditions to fall back on in terms of a deeper analysis of latke. My father was a psychiatrist. We were just talking about this. My mother was a labor economist, kind of, did a little business with the Labor Department. As a child, I learned about the Dictionary of Occupational Titles and, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, very important in my mother's world. But for this particular line of inquiry, I'm falling back on my own journalistic tradition, kind of investigative muckraking, worthy of Upton Sinclair. And what I've discovered is that latke dominance, and let's face it, Hamantascg. We all know who the king of the heap is here. It's the latke. So latke dominance is no accident. That's what I've found. The potato cartel. Think about it. Arguably has achieved control of the market on par with the steel and railroad robber barons of days gone by. And, one can imagine a command and control silo buried deep beneath the potato fields of, Idaho or Maine, or maybe both, with gray little figures hunched over screens, while banks of overhead monitors trace potato price fluctuations worldwide. And meanwhile, up above, the exploited masses who toil in the fields create vast wealth for the potato plutocrats. And, those workers can hardly afford bags of potato chips with their lunch. And in fact, and this is a true story. Today, at lunchtime, I happened to, walk into a local deli and order a sandwich. And I saw there was a bag of chips, and it looked interesting. Barbecue potato chips, my favorite. And it was a 2-ounce bag. And I said, okay, I'll get this too. And so I had to pay for that individually. And the woman says, $2.75. And I practically dropped the bag on the table. And I said, that expensive? And she said, yes, knowingly, yes. So, today, this is just a lecture. I'm supposed to be funny, right? But today I really learned the meaning of surplus value. So, $2.75, imagine that. No less an authority than Washington's own Joan Nathan. I'm sure you all know of Joan Nathan, great cookbook author, lists a dozen different kinds of holiday latkes one could make. There's carrot and parsnip, there's eggplant, there's spinach, there's zucchini. But did you ever wonder why it's the potato latke that sucks out all the oxygen of everything? It's just no accident. The Hanukkah story is a feel-good epic about how oil expected to last a night actually illuminates for 8 days and nights. And to mark this miracle, well, we fry latkes in oil. It makes a nice song for the kids, but what's really going on here? I'll tell you, it's an unholy alliance between big oil and big potato. And, in medieval Italy, my brother's a medievalist. That's another source I could have drawn on. But In any case, in medieval Italy, they mark Hanukkah with fritters made of cheese. Sounds good. But then at some point, the potato took over. Again, not an accident, I maintain. You may think of Hamantascg as marking the intrigues of Esther and Mordecai, enough twists for multiple seasons on Netflix. But actually, it celebrates one of history's earliest struggles for self-determination. And sure, as just Jaskowitz said, a great latke can be transcendent, but Hamantascg truly is the sustenance of liberation, I mean. So even if bite for bite, latke reigns as the Jewish culinary world champion, I stand in solidarity with Hamantascg. And I have a little add-on here, you know, don't ask me how I thought of this in the middle of the night, but I did. And it's a verse I've written in a traditional Jewish style literary format, and that is the limerick. So let's see if I can do this right. Bear with me. Pity the poor Hamantascg. It's no more than a quick nosh. Instead of cheers, it draws mumbles, but that's the way the cookie crumbles. Still, it beats the heck out of latkes, by gosh.
Dan, that was wonderful. Thank you. Wonderful. By the way, I like the line "more twist than a Netflix series." That was very funny. I really enjoyed that. That's excellent. Okay.
You know, if Netflix is watching this, it's all over the place. Yeah.
All right. One more time for Dan Freedman, everybody. That was great. Great stuff. Great stuff. All right, Dan, out of respect for my mistake on yours, I'm not going to say where the next contestant is going to be participating, although you can probably go back and forth and figure out on your own. Michael Rugel, yeah, Michael Rugel is the Programs and Content Coordinator. It's coordinator, right? That's the right pronunciation. At the National Museum of American Jewish Military History. Prior to that, he served on the museum's collections management staff. He has frequently written about Jews in the American military. And by the way, I have to tell you, I've been to the museum many times. It's a fabulous museum. So I hope everybody does take the time to go there and just walk through the exhibits. It's amazing. He has frequently written about Jews in the American military, and he's produced a series of videos about them, including descriptions of World War II experiences of American Jewish liberators of concentration camps. He regularly gives presentations about the history of Jews in the American military and museum programs, as well as, by the way, I want to interrupt again. You're right down the street on N Street, right? Is it
R Street, 18 R.
Okay, everybody, please go there. American military museums, programs, as well as to local schools, synagogues, community centers, and veterans groups. Mike, take it away.
Thanks, Howard. Thank you. So I am going to argue in favor of the latke. I don't think I realized at the time I was a fallen victim to the manipulations of Big Potato, but maybe that's what happened. Maybe they're so nefarious they got to me. But the reason I chose the latkes is some of my best Hanukkah memories going back to being a kid are of eating latkes. You know, I can remember those nights when the fifth consecutive night, my gift was a pair of socks. The latkes were kind of kept it feeling like a holiday. You know, who wanted that Atari game? The socks were good, you know. So I've always enjoyed, you know, my whole life eating latkes, and I really do think potato is nature's most perfect food. And when you fry it, it's even better. You know, I feel like when you fry them up, you're defeating nature. You're triumphing over nature, taking something that was already perfect and making it better. You're getting that root vegetable, nature's bounty. Hamantascg, they just fill you with sugar. You know, I eat 2 of those things and I feel sick for the next 3 days. Latkes, I get 20 pounds of them. I feel like Superman. I like that the crispy texture versus the crumbly falling apart of the Hamantascg. I like that you can take a latke and throw it like a frisbee, and even it falls apart just most of the time. You can see from that last comment, throwing them like a frisbee, that maybe, you know, I'm not that deep in as a foodie, and I decided to not go down the culinary criticism route since I'm sitting next to people that have written brilliantly about food. I did have a Reuben for lunch today that was pretty good, and so if anyone wants to talk over that, I'm happy to talk about it. I don't know how the James Beard Awards work, but just saying my lunch was pretty good get me there. Yeah. You know, some people suggest that I talk about my traditional family recipe for latkes, and I think we do have that in my family, but mine is, you know, you go out and you buy the frozen ones from Trader Joe's. And are the Trader Joe's ones good? Comparatively, they're not, but you put them in your mouth and they are delicious. But even the worst latke is absolutely delicious. But like I said, I don't want to go too far down culinary criticism, and I wanted to go to my comfort zone, Jewish American history, and specifically World War II, where just maybe the latke had a hand in the Allied victory in World War II, keeping us safe, making the world safe for democracy and freedom. There's this military tradition of peeling potatoes being like one of the worst jobs, KP duty. And I just want to share one, you know, like when these Jewish guys got involved, they made this into this amazing thing. And I want to introduce Corporal Sidney Talmud, if we can get up the first slide. Sidney Talmud was an Army cook. He's assigned to the 38th Signal Construction Battalion. He comes from Brooklyn and was headed over to Europe in 1944. So there he is. That's Sidney Talmud, and he's displaying some of the supplies he captured. And the skills for an Army cook were trying to find food, trying to find supplies when things were pretty scarce, and he had a talent for it. And that's what he's showing off in that photo. I can go ahead to the second slide. That's Sidney Talmud, shirtless, and if you can make out the handwritten caption on the top, it says, "Some knockers, huh?" So why am I showing you a picture of Corporal Sidney Talmud's knockers? No reason, I just thought it was kind of funny. I will get to the latke story in a minute, but I thought the knockers were enough. Dayenu. But here is a great story about latkes. So let's go ahead and on to the third slide. Okay, so this is a photo that's from Yank magazine. It shows it's a Jewish service at a place called Schloss Wright. Schloss Wright is a Renaissance era castle. It's not far from Dusseldorf. And during World War II, the castle had been officially turned over to the Nazi Minister of Propaganda, Joseph Goebbels, and it became known as Goebbels Castle. So the photo is initially jarring. You see that swastika, and that was a very intentional decision to leave that up and hold Jewish services as a message that things were changing. They flipped the propaganda script on Goebbels, and they hold Jewish services in what was the home of a man who had done more to spread the most evil lies about Jewish people in the most destructive way imaginable than anyone in history. And the picture that we're seeing there that was in Yank magazine is actually depicting a Purim service. So this is March of 1945. They had, the US is beginning to occupy Germany. They come across Goebbels Castle, and the opportunity for this propaganda to show Goebbels everything that Goebbels stood for was wrong, was being defeated. They decided to hold Purim service. This is actually a week after the actual Purim holiday, but seeing the opportunity, they decided to celebrate Purim. Everyone really appreciated the symbolism. And the article in Yank magazine, and Yank was a weekly magazine aimed at soldiers, kind of a weekly magazine equivalent of the Stars and Stripes. The quote in the article in Yank was, "The men in this service raised their voices in an ancient Hebrew hymn of jubilation sung at Purim to celebrate the deliverance of the Jews from an earlier Hitler, Haman of Persia, who long held the Hebrew in captivity in biblical times." There was a non-Jewish soldier there, a guy named Captain Frederick Pamp, and he attended the service. His quote was, "It was a satisfying experience as I have ever had in my life to hear the Hebrew service sung in the great hall of Goebbels' own chateau. Whatever else this war may have been fought for, you men of Jewish ancestry in our army can know that you are the symbols of American power on the side of justice, mercy, and equality." So this was a Purim service. So what is noticeably absent is Hamantascg. They didn't have any. So why didn't they have any Hamantascg? I think it's pretty clear. Hamantascg can't win a war on its own. We got to win this thing. They're nice, sweet little triangles, but they can't win a war. Fortunately, they're a little late on Purim, so Passover is right around the corner. So they decide to hold Passover services in the same thing, and that brings us back to our guy, Corporal Sidney Talmud. He's an Army cook. He's put in charge of food for this Passover service, and now that the Americans have been occupying this part of Germany for a few more weeks, they expect 300 Jewish soldiers to attend this Passover service. So the first thing Sidney Talman has to do is he calls to the guys that scrounge for him and he says, I need potatoes and I need them fast. And these guys are running out all over Germany collecting potatoes. He gets a full truckload of potatoes through the ingenuity of these guys he was serving with. So here's how he described it. This is an essay he wrote many years later. Directly off the veranda, where I set up 2 gasoline camp stoves with a gigantic banquet room that would easily accommodate the 300 reais I would feed. On one wall was a picture of Hitler, and one of my buddies had scrawled kaput across it. For the next 2 or 3 hours, I was too busy to deal with emotions. They came later. While I was frying latkes, a fellow came by and inquired what I was doing. I offered him some pancakes while I explained our presence. Evidently, the latkes agreed with him. He kept eating them and asking me lots of questions. And that night, his story flew across the Atlantic cable, and my parents were interviewed by Time and the papers and WEVD, and they planted trees for me in Israel, and my mother, rest her soul, discovered that I had lied to her. I wasn't having a great time in Paris after all. However, in his mother's will, she forgave me. When all the latkes were fried and eaten, I joined my comrades in the Passover songs. We had seen the atrocities, and now we were saving some small measure of vengeance and victory. I just wanted to read one more quote from the Jewish chaplain who ran the service, Joseph Schubau. This is indeed retribution. When this little monkey Goebbels decreed the burning of the synagogue 7 years ago, he little imagined that we would one day eat potato pancakes in his home. So about a month after this, Hitler takes his own life. Goebbels follows the next day, committing suicide. And a week after that is the German surrender. So did the eating of latkes lead directly to the German surrender? Yes, it did.
Outstanding, Mike. One more time for Michael Rugel. That was wonderful, Mike. Mike, great stuff. By the way, it's funny, since you're involved in American Jewish military history, our next contestant, I'll just actually disclose that Todd Kliman and I have known each other for decades, since the early 80s. In fact, Mike, this kind of, I don't know if this works for your museum, we actually fought in Grenada together. I don't know if you have an exhibit. It was scary. The weekend I'll never forget, the way we stormed that tiki bar, but that was our war. Ladies and gentlemen, Todd Kliman. It's pronounced Todd, right? Todd, okay. Todd Kliman, thank you. You're already applauding for you. Todd Kliman is an author. We have the wrong one. Todd Kliman is an author, a very funny gentleman. Todd Kliman is an author, essayist, and food writer. He has won 2 James Beard Awards, including a 2016 MFK Fisher Distinguished Writing Award for his autobiography, and is the author of 2 critically acclaimed books. His writing has appeared in The New Yorker, Harper's, The Oxford American, The Daily Beast, The Washington Post Magazine, and NPR Online. Among others, he has been widely anthologized, including 7 times in the Best Food Writing series. Todd Kliman was previously a food critic, cultural critic, and food editor for the Washingtonian, and served as editor at large for Richmond Magazine. For 10 years, he taught literature and writing at American University and at Howard University. At Howard, he was also the editorial director of Chris Rock's magazine of satire, the Illtop Journal, modeled after the Harvard Lampoon. We're halfway through the bio, by the way, just if you want to take a break. He is currently, refresh yourselves. Yeah, Todd is currently at work on two books, a collection of essays, The Two Hungers, currently out to publishing houses, and an epic about the arrival of conversos to Mexico in the late 16th century. Ladies and gentlemen, Todd Kliman.
Thank you. And before I begin, I have to say I repudiate my Jewishness and the Holocaust being used to sway an audience in a debate about latkes. No, in all seriousness, I want to begin tonight by saying this is really stupid. And no, that's not a knock. Its stupidity is, I think, what makes it delightful. In this time of taking sides, and not just that side over there, but yes, that and every side, everything. every issue, every outrage, everything in our midst. We can take a side tonight. Maybe it's just for tonight. Maybe we'll change our minds tomorrow. You know, we can do that. We don't have to do everything we're told. We don't have to we don't belong to a monolith. We don't all have to think alike. We can take a side. And tonight, at least, it doesn't matter at all. It's of no consequence whatsoever in the world. And I love that. We need that. So, latkes versus Hamantascg. Why do I come down where I do on this very stupid, very Jewish apples, oranges debate? I think it's important to establish something up front, which is that we can't decide which way we fall on this question by looking at the Platonic ideal of each. That is to say, the best, most exalted version of each. We can't and we won't. In a past life, and for 15 years, I was a food critic. 15 years, 550 meals per year. Yeah. Whew. And I ate everywhere. I ate all across the world and all across the country, including at the new school Jewish delis popping up all around the nation. You know those places, the upmarket, bistro-style delis that make it respectable for nice Jewish boys to work retail. And did they have good latkes? Some of them, but tricked out latkes with ramps or curry spicing. Latkes that had to outsource flavor to give them any kind of interest at all. Here it was, the highest rung you could get on the food ladder. And the latkes were pretty good. But take just a step down on that ladder, and what do you find? Not pretty good, and not pretty. Take a couple more steps down into the world of home cooks and synagogue get-togethers. This, folks, is where most latkes are. What do people love about them? Not potatoes, not potatoes. No, not potatoes, salt, grease, fry. Sure, hits a spot for a few bites. It's like food truck food. Crunch, salt, fat, zing. Before you realize it's mostly all affect and very little substance. And this is the good version. That's right. The good version is a modest notch up from a McDonald's hash brown thingy. Has anyone had a Baltimore latke? Jesus, that thing. The last one I had was a few years ago. It was the size of 2 hash brown thingies, one stacked on top of the other, dredged thickly in flour, and then plunged into the deep fryer until the color resembled, I'm sorry, a shade of turd. Well, I ate it, I had to, and I didn't eat again for another 24 hours. Note to self, remember this for the next era of Yom Kippur. This is what I've tasted in my time, in my travels. Now, as for Hamantascg, and I'm not standing staunchly behind you, Hamantascg. I'm not your Jewish Tammy Wynette. Most Hamantascg aren't much better. The good ones, sure. The good ones are little gifts, a reminder that God loves us, or at least that there are some among us, some rare few, who can actually bake. But most, not great. And by the way, why is it that almost no filling in a Hamantascg is any good? Chocolate, disappointing. Cherry, terrible. Prune, ugh. But apricot, golden. Poppy seed, delightful. But, and this is a big but, and I cannot lie, a mediocre cookie is still a cookie. If you're over the age of 40 and you're Jewish, then you grew up eating Entenmann's and you loved it. It wasn't good, but you didn't know that then. In time, you grew to love creme brulee and pot de creme and affogato and a whole host of other things that you probably couldn't have pronounced when you were 15. But as they say, you can take the boy out of the shtetl, but you can't take the shtetl out of the boy. Entenmann's is in your core, your deep heart's core. And what was Entenmann's? Think. Soft and cakey, even if it wasn't cake. Gooey centers, cookies that didn't crunch, but maybe crumbled. A mediocrity we could all love and did love. And that's what I taste when I bite into most Hamantascg. I bite into our pre-food revolution past, before everything became complicated, before everything went off the rails and broke. The presidency, the culture, decency, identity, the nature of work, the nature of nature. When America really and truly was simpler, Hamantascg is the definition of mid, but a wonderful mid. A trip back in time mid that comforts and soothes and sends sugar coursing through your veins and compels you to eat 1, 2, 3, 4, and wash it all down with a cold glass of milk. Thank you.
One more time for Todd Kliman, everybody. And one more time for all the panelists tonight, by the way. By the way, Todd, you remind me just one quick thing, but we're going to do some interaction on the panel here, and then Jerry and Amy are going to open up to voting from the audience, and then we'll join the back. By the way, really quick thing, this is my favorite Jewish joke. All right, ready for my favorite Jewish joke? You kind of remind us in your wonderful remarks. Here's my favorite Jewish joke. Two Gentiles are walking down the street, and one of the Gentile meets the other Gentile and says, "Which do you prefer, latkes or Hamantascg?" And the other Gentile says, "I like them both." That's my favorite all-time Jewish joke. All right, anybody want to respond to anybody else on the panel tonight to open this up, and then we'll do our voting after that. Any rebuttals or any reactions? Yes, sir. Dan, take it away, Dan.
I don't really have rebuttals. I really wish I kind of, something inside me wants to say, like, what are you talking about with the latkes, or, are you crazy about Hamantascg? I wanted to kind of go there, but I don't really, you all were so fine in your explanations that I really don't have anything like that, but I had a few things that I observed, and one of the sort of common denominators here, it seems to me, is at the risk of sort of being slightly off color, there was an old saying about pizza, even when it's bad, it's good, and that applies to so many things in life. But that really kind of is a binding. That's not a pun. It's sort of it binds Hamantascg and latkes together. And I hate to speak ill of my grandmother, blessed memory. She was a great Jewish cook, came over by herself. But honestly, her latkes were sort of gray, and I think that was because she didn't, put them in ice water. So the best latkes I had are, courtesy of my wife, who may be actually watching now. And just my last little tie-in, you mentioned McDonald's. hash browns. My wife, before I came over here, we were discussing latkes, and she said, you know, McDonald's, and this is sort of apropos of what I said about you want latkes with that. And my wife said, well, you know, I always think of McDonald's hash browns looking like latkes. So, and I actually put it in my script, but then cut it out for space reasons. You know, big mistake. Anyway, that's why.
By the way, I don't know if you know this, they just opened a McDonald's in Israel. I don't know if you know the McDonald's in Israel, they serve the never happy meal, just so you know. That's right. Anybody else on the panel? Beryl, any responses or reactions? And I'm looking, hey, Jerry back there? Let's see our stage cue for time. All right, Amy is giving us the time cue. We're going to wrap it up. I think, is that right, Amy? You're giving me the wrap it up? Okay, Beryl, and then we'll cut everybody else off.
I had nothing interesting necessarily to say. I mean, I will say that you say that Latkes helped the Allies win the war against the Germans. I just find it curious that at one place where I can get something akin to a latke is a German restaurant. So I wondered if the Germans, stole the latke idea, and that's one of the reasons that the Allies got mad and won the war. But anyway.
May have some German roots that go way back before World War II. But yeah, or to others on that.
I just wanted to say I know we're going to have a show of hands, and I'd like everybody to base what they pick not off of personal preference, but off of what they've heard tonight. And also, I would ask that everybody not be swayed by history and appeals that tug at the Jewish heartstrings, much as that's important to us all.
Right. Jerry, I'm looking at you in the back. We are going to do our vote now and then our conclusion. So Jerry Garfinkel, just to let you know, and Amy, do you want to lead our voting tally, or do you want me to get up and? All right. So we're not going to include Jerry. If I have this right, we are not going to include the people at home on Zoom for this. So we'll just do as Todd says a show of hands. Let's hear it first. Let's hear it first for undecided. Anybody still undecided after tonight? Well, that's okay. There. Looks like we have about 40, 50 people undecided. Okay. Let's hear it for, I'm not sure. Latkes, show of hands for latkes. All right.
7.
About 7. Okay, about 2 or 3. And Hamantascg, let's hear it for, about 700 there. All right. The winner is, Amy, who's the winner? The Hamantascg are the winner, the 2024 Hamantascg winners. Never had before.
We're all winners.
Tonight we're all winners.
We're all winners. This is a safe space.
A plug, I just want to thank the Jewish Study Center for organizing this. It's all volunteer. What they do is wonderful work. Please join up and sign for other classes. And do I have this plug now right, Amy? I've heard you do it so many times. Wonderful events, classes in person now too, or mostly still on Zoom? We're going to be back in person soon. Again, Amy Schwartz, ladies and gentlemen, and Jerry Garfinkel. And that concludes for tonight. Everybody, have a good time.